Testing. Okay, I think we're on air. I think. Testing 1, 2. This is a live stream, just bear with me. Just making sure we are live. Yep, we appear to be. Great. Okay, yeah, welcome back. Thanks for joining me. Disclaimer, this is a live stream, so apologies if I'm rambling or if the editing's rubbish or I stutter over my words or whatever like that. This is just purely me just jamming here, coming up with some ideas, patching on the fly, sharing those ideas with you. These may be useful for you, hopefully they are. Also, it's a two-way thing, so do get involved if you want to. Suggest some ideas as people in chat room. Just suggest any ideas about patching and what you might want to see me doing. I'm sure you can give me some excellent ideas on how I can develop what I'm doing here. And what I'm ultimately doing here is I am trying to come up with some new sounds that I'm going to use for my new EP that I'm working on. I was really excited this morning to receive test pressings of the vinyl for my first single, double A side 12-inch. So I'm going to have a listen to that later and see what that's like. Really happy that that's happening. What I'm doing now, I'm working towards a 4-track EP, also to submit to the label. And hopefully they'll like those tunes and they'll want to put that out as well. That's how it goes. I'm just checking here that we are definitely live. I'm not just talking to myself. And yeah, we are live. That's all good. And I'll open that in there. Great. Just share this. Lovely stuff. There we go. Sorry about this. Great. Okay. On with the show. So where did we leave off from last time? Well, I was just making some bass sounds before. This is kind of where I got to. Let me just play it for you. I've got a dodgy lead here as well somewhere. One of these cables, I'm pretty sure. It may also be this mix-up module by IntelliGel that I've got, and I only say that because it's got some crackly pots whenever I turn things up and down. They have responded and said you can send it back, but at the minute we're just getting things in the right-hand channel, which is not useful for us at all. This isn't a great start. Okay. Cool. There it is. Lovely. So that's the bass sound that I got last time. And let me just share my other camera with you. That's it. We can have a look at that. Which is that one. And what I've got going on here is the Cwejman VCO6, which I was using last time, which is absolutely great. And that is going into a little mixer here, just taking out one of the oscillators into a mixer. And I'm also taking another output of that into the plate bearer, which is distorting the signal and going back in to a mix on another channel. So basically I've got distorted and I've got a clean version of the bass, and that is all then going into the tip top filter, and from there, sorry, I'm just definitely checking we are still streaming. Yeah, we are. That's all good. Great. Some people joining us in the chat room, that's good. So from there, dry signal, distorted signal, into the VCF. That then goes into the WASP filter now. So I'm taking those combined signals into the WASP filter and I'm using that as a low pass filter. So I've got a high pass and I've got a low pass going on. So I've got that kind of thing going on. And I've also got distortion coming from the Torpedo, just going into a couple of channels. And then the whole thing runs into an overseer. I really like the overseer. It's a great filter. It's got low pass one way, it's got a high pass the other way. And I can shape also the distortion coming from the Torpedo, because that's got a high pass and a low pass filter in there. It's really cool, I like that. Or I can affect everything. So without the Torpedo, and I can choose dry, I can choose distorted, I can add more distortion onto that with the plate bearer for one, combine them together, add the Torpedo, nice. Just to give it a bit of context, I've got a kick drum going, and the kick drum's coming from the Bitbox 1010 Music Bitbox. This is really cool, I really like it. I did get the Orthogonal Devices 301, ER301 initially for doing sample playback, but I just found that this is it's really quick to use, for me anyway, in terms of my brain and how that functions and what have you. And yeah, you can just drop samples into it. The samples can play back like normal samples, or they can be like clips like you get in Ableton. It does automatic time stretching. It sounds great. It's got 4 outputs. It's really cool. I really like it. And I've just dropped in some a kick drum here onto one of the channels which I'm triggering from the Hermod. The Hermod's just sending out a fall to the floor essentially to it. And I've got the output coming out of the Bitbox, and that runs into channel 1 of this IntelliGel mix-up. Now this IntelliGel mix-up comes after the sidechain compression, so it's not getting compressed. Obviously it doesn't want to get compressed itself, but I am splitting the trigger from the Hermod that generates the kick drum trigger, which goes into the sidechain input of the compressor. So the compressor's pumping. You should be able to hear that if I play it again. So you got that pumping where the kick is, and I can just drop the kick in. There we go. That gives it some context, doesn't it? Really shape that Torpedo and get some really low stuff going on. So filtered down on the overseer. Really bring that Torpedo up a bit more. I'm mainly listening to that Torpedo now. Overseer on the main output. take the torpedo out. I've got high pass on the Cwejman. One thing that's pretty cool about the Wasp filter is if you take the spare output, which in this case is the bandpass output, and plug it back into the CV input of the filter, you get that. Just rumbles and crackles. Without it, with it, it's just different tone again. Anyway, I've left it out for now. So that's pretty much the base sorted. I'm quite happy with all of that. That's all good. And everything's been controlled by the Quadra envelope, by the way, which is opening and closing. The two filters and the Tangle Quartet, which, as I mentioned in the previous video, has got the torpedo running through it. So that's all groovy. I'm happy with all of that. If you've got any other suggestions about developing that, let me know. Maybe more distortion. I don't know. As you can tell, I like distortion. I like stereo bass as well. So going beyond there, I started to look at chords. And this is really what today's live stream's about mostly. It's about chords. And for chords, I'm using the other 1010 Bitbox I've got. Actually, it's the 1010 Effects box. And I've chosen this just for polyphony. One of the main reasons I got into Eurorack was for polyphony and all the exciting possibilities within that, and it's a completely different approach to just using a polyphonic synthesizer, of course. So yeah, I got the Synthbox. I love the Synthbox because you've got a MIDI input, so you can send it obviously more than one note at once rather than just a CV signal, which is it's always one note or one CV, one gate. It's got 4 outputs as well. It's got 2 filters. It's got 2 envelopes. It's got 2 LFOs. It's got a delay. It's got a sequencer in there. It's got a third oscillator. It's actually got 3 oscillators essentially, and you can have them all as different waveforms and combine them together. It's really cool. Yeah, I really like it. And what I've decided to do is send MIDI to it at the moment. I'm just sending MIDI from Ableton, and I said I'd talk a little bit more about this. So I'm sending MIDI from Ableton, from the computer, via USB into the Hermod, and the Hermod has got it's got a USB device input essentially, and that is then seen inside of Ableton as a device. You can then just choose MIDI channels 1 to 8, which is essentially channels 1 to 8 on the Hermod, and then you can kick MIDI out to that. It's a really great way of programming for me, because I really like programming inside of Ableton and using all the Max for Live devices, you know, all the weird kind of sequences, just to get kind of happy accidents going, and weird, you know, multiple arpeggiators running at different clock speeds, and one going forwards, one going backwards and forwards, and all that kind of thing. So I can take advantage of all of that, pump it to the Hermod, and then spit it out to anywhere in the modular system. It's great. And once you've got something you're happy with inside of Ableton, you can just record it to a channel on the Hermod. It's dead easy. You just hit record. It's already clocked, so it'll just record at the beginning. A lot of people look at the Hermod and they think, oh, it's got a small screen. I'm not too keen on that. Yeah, it can be a bit of a hassle to program on something like that, but you don't have to. You can just program in Ableton if that's your thing. Some of you are probably thinking, why are you using a computer when you've got a modular? I don't mind, not for programming, at least anyway. Once I've programmed the sequences and I've got the melodies going, it all goes into the Hermod and it stays there. So I digress a little bit there, but at least you can see now how I'm working with the Hermod and Ableton. So I've got MIDI going to the Hermod. That is then being spit out at the MIDI output, which then goes into the synth box or the FX box. It's actually, if you don't know, the 1010 units, all of these, basically, you can buy one of them and you can either put in the synth, you can put in the effects, you can put in a sequencer, or you can put in the sample playback, the Bitbox, basically. And all you do is just essentially load up a different firmware for each one. It's dead easy to do. So I've got, like I say, I've got two in my rack here. One's playing samples and this one's playing synthesizer, playing synth voices, essentially. So let's play what I've got going on here. I've got some MIDI playing inside of Ableton, which is being routed to channel 8 on the Hermod. And if I press play on that, let's mute the bass for now. So I've got MIDI coming out of channel 8 of Ableton going into the Hermod via USB. I've then gone in and basically set up Hermod to kick out MIDI data from channel 8 into the Synthbox, which it's doing, and that's doing it via MIDI cable, which goes to a mini jack MIDI cable, basically. So let's open that up. I think you can see that. That should be the right camera. The output of the Synthbox is going into a WMD overseer, and that is then going into my mixer, basically. So there we go. Simple as that. So this is the overseer, which again is high pass, low pass. Yes, I've got 3 of these overseers. I've got one for the bass mix, I've got one for the main master output, and I've got one for the effects box, synth box. I just really like them, as you can tell. They're great for performance. I did mention that the Synthbox has actually got its own filters in there, and it does. The Synthbox has 2 filters in there. It's got 2 envelopes and it's got delays. Why am I using a separate filter on here when I've got filters in there? Because I'm modulating the filters in, or I want to modulate the filters in here from another envelope or from the tempi or something like that to trigger those envelopes and get sort of strange filter movement going on that's kind of out of sync and in sync with the notes that are being played inside of Ableton. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to patch that up now, I think. So I've got some basic chords. This is I think that's an F minor with a 7th, I think. My bass is also obviously an F, which I'll put in. So I've got independent control of filtering the bass and the synth, basically. Okay, so let's, I'll just mute the bass again. Let's make this a little bit more interesting. I'm going to use an external input into the synth box here to trigger some of the filters and things like that. So if I go to the right camera, you should be able to see this is touchscreen as well. So what I've gone and done is I've assigned envelope 2 100% to the filter 1 cutoff. Envelope 2 looks like this, and I can play with the decay time, so I can get very sort of staccato-y. I can open it right up, introduce more sustain if I want. take away the sustain if I want that real staccato. I've got delay. This is the delay that's in there. I've got it on a 8th note at the minute without it. And you can hear this, it's kind of sliding up into the, like the filter opening, sort of very smooth. And again, what I've gone and done there is I've gone to the filter and I've assigned LFO1 100% to open and close that cutoff. So I've got both the envelope and I've got an LFO, which is, by the way, the LFO is just, if we go to LFO1, it's a triangle. That's its rate. 59.4%. I don't really know what that means. It'd be really cool if the LFO was clockable. I presume it is. But I'm not sure how to do it. But anyway, it's set at 59.4%. Anyway, it's got this interesting movement to it, and that's what I like. So with that, again, envelope. Let's add the delay back into it. Change the delay time if you want. Slower. It's really slow now. I like it, those ghost notes. Almost creates another pattern. Well, it creates another pattern, obviously, but almost as if there's another chord being played there. Let's go. Quickest you can go is 64. Get that kind of very quick feedback, which is quite interesting. Quite like that. I don't know, I just settled on 8th notes. That's fine for me. So if we put that in context, let's have a little jam here and put the kick in, put the bass in. So high pass out. Bring in the bass. We can have the kick, bring the kick in. So loads of possibilities there. Just high past the bass. Loads of stuff going on. Well, I say loads, actually, it's a pretty simple setup at the moment. There's, you know, I've got some polyphonic stuff going on with its own delay. I've got bass and I've got kick, and that is kind of it at the moment. I want to bring some more percussion now. I want to also send the kick through some distortion and that kind of thing, or have multiple kicks going on. That's kind of going around my head at the minute. I'd also like to use maybe the Form SA toner on the kick. See how that is. That might be quite interesting. Also, I'd like to get this Just Friends in there somewhere, maybe open and closing the envelopes of the filters. The other thing is that I'm very big on sub. So I know that I want to have just sub playing all the time, usually just the same note, just boo, whatever. This is in F. So what I might do is use the even VCO from Bafako, and let me just check that out. Let's just go 1 volt per octave input, and I'm going to go out of output 3 on the Hermod, and then in Ableton just going to create MIDI channel 3, and I'm just going to make an F note that's just sustained the whole time basically. I'm just solo that, so we'll just hear that. I'll mute the bass, the kick drum, and just going to then send the output of the even